Another week has gone by in January, and we still have not gotten any news about the new DC movie universe slate, unless of course you're watching this in the future, in which case, I don't know, we might have, but as has been the case for the last few months, we don't have to really go more than maybe a day or two without getting some sort of hint from James Gunn, and in this video I'll be talking about everything he hinted at recently regarding the new DC movie universe, basically everything since the last time I uploaded a video on this subject. James Gunn liked to tweet talking about Storm Reid, the actress who played Bloodsport's daughter in the Suicide Squad, saying that she would absolutely reunite with Idris Elba for a potential Bloodsport spin-off. This might very well hint at a Bloodsport spin-off, which I always thought was something that was very possible. Out of the two, between Bloodsport and Peacemaker, it surprised me that Peacemaker got a spin-off, considering he was the one who was more so of a villain in that movie, while Bloodsport was maybe the main character. But also, more importantly, it supports what has been teased a lot already, which is that at least some of the actors, especially the ones from the Suicide Squad side of things, will be remaining with this new universe from the DCEU. James Gunn liked to tweet praising Batman The Long Halloween, or rather the animated movies, and asked James Gunn to make a movie adaptation about The Long Halloween. This is really weird to me since there are already two movies that are inspired and largely adapted from The Long Halloween, those being The Dark Knight, which adapted the Two-Face side of things, and then The Batman, which basically adapted everything else. I don't know about you guys, but I think it would be a good idea to move on and take inspiration from other stories, preferably those that include Robin and the rest of the Bat family. So for a third small thing in a row before I get to something a bit bigger, James Gunn tweeted about reading All-Star Superman, a story that is widely regarded as one of the best Superman comics of all time, which also got a movie adaptation, or rather an animated movie adaptation called All-Star Superman as well. I'm not going to delve much into this because I don't actually think it's a hint or anything. I don't think the story will inspire the movie that James Gunn is writing. It might inspire some of the tone and maybe the visuals, but the actual story of All-Star Superman would not make sense for the basis of the movie, in my opinion. James Gunn liked to tweet about an article saying what the DC Universe's first chapter should look like. This seems like a very unusual thing for James Gunn to like, but maybe it's because the website got it right. Maybe he was reading through the article and it was surprising him how much of it was going to look like what his slate's going to look like. So maybe that's why he liked it. I mean, it's probably not everything, but there is some indication here that this article has teased, even if it was inadvertent, what the slate would look like, or at least something similar. This article does mention exactly which stories these movies should adapt, and it's possible that they got things right in that regard as well. So with that in mind, I'll be going over basically all 6 of these films, what the article says about each one, and I'll also mention how accurate I think they are going to be, how likely each one of these movies are, and how well they will work. Because to be honest, I did not like this article at all. I thought that most of it was kind of terrible in what they wanted to be made into movies. Some of it wasn't even accurate to the comics, like they got things wrong, but I will go over it here. So the first movie is a Superman movie to kick things off, which is obviously understandable, and that is what is going to happen. But the story they want to adapt is a story called Superman for Tomorrow, where 1 million people suddenly vanish, including Lois Lane, which leads Superman to a war zone where he kinda imposes his own will onto sovereign countries, and then later he finds where all the people vanished to into like some sort of altered phantom zone, which he himself altered. So I gotta be honest, I read this story for this video and I really did not like it. The writing is very unusual. Nobody talks like an actual person. It feels like everybody's talking in like poems. Superman's characterization is very bad. He's so cold and distant, and I think that might have been the point, like he was kind of separated from Clark Kent, but that never goes anywhere. Clark Kent is never shown to be an integral part of Superman. They never re-merge, and if they do, it's off-screen. It's a really weird and unusually written story, and for this article to say that that would be the perfect story to start off this universe with, I wholeheartedly disagree. The Jim Lee art is great, and the premise of the story isn't terrible. It's something special, but it isn't terrible. But it wasn't an easy story to get through, and of all of the Superman stories that have been teased by Gunn, like All-Star Superman, Up in the Sky, and one more we'll get to from this article, this is easily the story I'd like to see adapted or inspire the movie the least, and that's like by far. I really didn't like this story. The article goes on to say that the second movie should be a grounded Green Arrow movie based off of a story called Green Arrow Year One. This is a story I've read before and has been adapted before, specifically into Arrow Season 1, and also technically the rest of the flashbacks throughout the entire series. If you know anything about Green Arrow, the story is exactly what you would expect. It's his origin story. He gets stranded on a deserted island and must learn how to survive. But for finding out that the island isn't deserted at all, it is in fact based for a huge heroin operation led by China White. Green Arrow's origin story hasn't been told in a movie before, so it might be necessary for general audiences to not skip it. But for me personally, I'd much rather skip it, as we've seen a much more expanded version of the same story before, and I have a hard time believing a 2-hour movie can live up to the storytelling and development that was given to us in the aforementioned previous adaptation of the same story. But beyond that, the article also says that the movie should introduce, or rather reintroduce, Black Canary, but I don't understand how that could possibly fit into the island storyline. Instead, I'd go with a story about a more experienced Green Arrow meeting Black Canary for the first time, as somehow, someway, despite having 8 seasons, that isn't really something we saw much of in Arrow. The article then says that the third movie should be a Green Lantern movie that expands the DC universe, and that it should star Jon Stewart in a story based on Green Lantern Mosaic. Now, I wholeheartedly agree that a Green Lantern movie should be of top priority. In fact, I would say it should go before the Green Arrow movie. But the story they chose is very unusual. It's a story where the Guardians of the Universe, or rather one of them, goes insane and starts transporting entire cities to Oa, which creates a strange mosaic planet. After defeating the Guardian, Jon Stewart is tasked to be the Green Lantern of this strange planet. I wholeheartedly disagree with this approach to the Green Lantern Corps movies, as there's so many cool stories to go with, and this is definitely not one of them. This is a very unusual one. I also don't think it's a good idea to skip over Hal Jordan, and I think the movies should mostly be focused on the insane mid to late 2000s run of Green Lantern, and that Jon Stewart should either be introduced in a sequel if the first one is an origin for Hal, or maybe the first movie could be a buddy cop movie between Hal and Jon. But at the same time, isn't Jon Stewart getting his own TV show? Didn't James Gunn say that that is still indeed happening? So I don't really know what's going on with the Green Lantern Corps, if they're getting a TV show or a movie or both. I personally think a movie series has much more potential, but for right now, we really don't know what's happening with the Green Lanterns, aside from the fact that the Jon Stewart show is technically still in development, until further notice. The next movie in the article is a Superman movie, so like a sequel to the first one, based off of What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, or its animated movie adaptation, Superman vs. the Elite. Now, this story, unlike Superman for Tomorrow, is great and would be a perfect story, not for the sequel, but actually for the first Superman movie, as the story does a fantastic job at kind of something that needs to happen in real life, showing people what's so great about a wholesome, non-killing, inspiring, and hopeful Superman, which is something that people have seemingly appreciated less and less over the years in favor of a darker or edgier Superman, or even an evil Superman that they may find more interesting. If you don't know what the story is about, I implore you to watch the movie and or read the comic book, but the story is basically about a group of superpowered characters named the Elite showing up, and they gain people's respect really quickly because they start killing terrorists and supervillains. People are sick of these people being locked up just to escape again and again and cause more and more havoc, and this challenges Superman's place in the world and whether or not he's truly effective. The story ends in a great scene where Superman proves to the Elite how terrifying and destructive he can be if they cross the line. It's a great story, if a bit of a short one, but I think taking the basic elements from that story and either expanding on them and or combining them with something else, or even maybe something new, can give us a great Superman movie, and it could work really well to make people appreciate a regular, more wholesome Superman a bit more, because again, it doesn't really seem like they are. But it makes a little sense to me that they said this should be the sequel and not the first one. That was a bit weird. The next movie, according to the article, should be a Martian Manhunter movie based on a story called American Alien. Now the thing about this is the story is actually called Superman American Alien, and as far as I can tell, Martian Manhunter doesn't appear in it at all, and yet the article goes on to say that the story is about Martian Manhunter, and not only that, but that it's an exploration of his identity, emotions, and internal struggles. This part really stood out to me, and I thought, this is like the part where I thought, why did James Gunn like this article? It's not an exceptionally good article. It's on one of those websites where you have to go to another page for the next item each time to maximize the ad revenue, and they just blatantly get things wrong, like with Martian Manhunter. But it's not just the whole American Alien thing. This part of the article also says that this movie should set up a new big bad, the Anti-Monitor, which doesn't make any sense. Why would a Martian Manhunter movie, and how would a Martian Manhunter movie set up the Anti-Monitor Anti-Monitor. He's not from Mars, he's from the antimatter universe. If anything, a Green Lantern movie should set that up, since Sinestro, he creates his Sinestro Corps in the antimatter universe. Man, this part of the article makes me mad. Plus, I don't think a Martian Manhunter movie is entirely necessary. I think we should have a large focus in a Justice League movie, but the solo movies, I think, should focus on other characters. Like, the article says nothing about a Flash, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, or Batman movie in this first chapter, which the article says should culminate in a Justice League movie. So, this article says that the lineup for this Justice League movie should be Superman, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Batman, Wonder Woman, and the Flash to face off against some new gods. So, the Anti-Monitor setup in the Martian Manhunter movie clearly meant nothing, but anyway, this story would be based off of the Death of the New God story, which is kind of like a Gord the God Butcher type situation where someone goes around killing a bunch of new gods, which doesn't sound at all like a good story basis for a Justice League movie. It definitely sounds like a good New Gods movie, but not a Justice League movie. Like, it doesn't really connect at all. Anyway, yeah, I didn't like this article at all. I do not understand why James Gunn liked it, but maybe the article was spot on. Maybe they predicted the exact slate of the new DC universe. And if that is true, then I'm really hoping they got none of the source material right, because none of it sounds very good, except for what's so funny about Truth, Justice, and the American Way. But that should not be the second Superman movie, it should be the first Superman movie. The For Tomorrow story, it's bad. Green Lantern Mosaic is not what they should be focusing on. Green Arrow Year 1 we've already seen before. The Martian Manhunter movie would be a Superman movie if they go off of the source material, and the Justice League movie would be about the new gods. So yeah, none of it sounds good, but the actual slate could definitely work. It's not terrible. So that was easily the biggest and most time-consuming thing to talk about in this video, but it isn't the last thing. There are a couple more things to go over. James Gunn said he's probably going to work with the actors from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies at some point in the DC universe, with the actors specifically being mentioned being Dave Bautista, Chris Pratt, Pom Klementieff, Zoe Saldana, and Karen Gillan, and I thought it'd be fun to go over who I think each one of these actors could play. He didn't mention Bradley Cooper or Vin Diesel, who play Rocket and Groot, because they are only voice actors, so I'm not going to be going over them either. So Chris Pratt, I think that he's the hardest to maybe see as anybody other than Star-Lord, because the rest of the actors wear some sort of makeup on them to differentiate them from what they would look like in the DC universe. But if we're disregarding all that, then I think Chris Pratt could be a pretty good casting for Booster Gold. I mean, I just think that it fits his energy. He kind of looks the part, but it's more so his energy. He just feels very Booster Goldy. Ironically, if he tones down that energy just a little bit, then he could be a pretty good Ted Kord as well, but definitely more so Booster Gold. I think Pom Klementieff could be a good Ice. She has a foreign accent that's close enough to what Ice is from that they could change it a bit, I guess, but I think that she could work in the role. Technically, she already played a Corto Maltesian dancer in the Suicide Squad, but you could have the same actress play a new character, especially if you give her a different hair color. I definitely think it could work. Dave Bautista has been pretty popularly fan cast as Bane, and yeah, that could definitely work. With Zoe Saldana and Karen Gillan, it's a bit less clear-cut, but I think Zoe Saldana could maybe be a good Hawkgirl, or maybe a previous reincarnation of Hawkgirl, while Karen Gillan, honestly, just because of her hair color, could be Poison Ivy. I haven't really seen Karen Gillan in many things aside from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, so honestly, I'm not sure, but just based off of looks, I think she could be a good Poison Ivy. Another small thing is that James Gunn replied to a tweet about Ray Palmer, aka The Atom, with comic book writer Gail Simone saying that Ray Palmer is the Scott Summers of DC Comics, and James Gunn says, okay, hold on. Meaning, I think that maybe Scott Summers was underused in the X-Men movies, and Ray Palmer is a big character who hasn't been really used in live action. He was in the Arrowverse, but he has never appeared in a movie, and James Gunn's like, okay, hold on, he's gonna turn him into a much bigger character, and maybe give him his own movie. It has been hinted at in the past that the Atom will be joining the Justice League, not by James Gunn himself, but maybe by James Gunn, as there was a leak that said that James Gunn wants the Atom and certain other characters to join the Justice League. Obviously, it's just a leak, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but this definitely supports it that James Gunn might want Ray Palmer to be in the DC universe. So the last thing to talk about here is Jason Momoa and his situation, his Lobo Aquaman, that weird thing that's been going on for the last couple of months where it seems like he's downgrading from Aquaman to Lobo, but also he's very excited about it because Lobo is like his favorite character and he'd be a great casting for Lobo, and even though it would be a lot harder to be Lobo, and Lobo has far less potential for like $1 billion movie franchise, which Aquaman already is, still he's extremely excited about being Lobo, which hasn't been confirmed, but yeah, it's basically been confirmed. Well, recently there was a bit of an addition to this. There was this whole thing where Jason Momoa was yet again very excited about something, but that part isn't new. What is new is that Jason Momoa talked about this in an interview, and he basically confirmed that he is remaining as Aquaman while also playing other characters too. So the situation here seems to be that Jason Momoa will be playing both Aquaman and Lobo in this new universe, which could definitely be unusual if they ever have any screen time together, but these two characters don't really interact much in the comics, plus with all the makeup and maybe even a bit of CGI, Lobo will probably look very, very different, enough that even if they're on screen together, then people won't really have to notice that they look similar. There was a question of Momoa downgrading to Lobo, but that doesn't seem to be what's happening. He's still Aquaman, but now he'll also be Lobo. That does mean that the new DC universe will have Aquaman who's 45 years old, a good 20 years older than Superman. But I wouldn't say that's a deal breaker. As long as Superman is as experienced, and hopefully a bit more experienced than this universe's version of Aquaman, then the age gap between them doesn't really matter much. They're not nearly as connected to each other as, say, Superman and Batman. So with all that out of the way, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more on the subject. Any day now, we'll be getting some sort of announcement from James Gunn. It could literally be any day now. There's only 9 days left in January. Bye.